Hi everyone, happy new week and happy new moon in Aries, which was around about 13 hours ago. It was obviously conjunct the sun, which is what a new moon is. Each month when the moon comes conjunct to the sun, so our identity, what we want and how we feel becomes renewed at the same time. And this one was conjunct Uranus as well. So for the next week, there will still be some surprises and some pretty quick changes or developments, especially if the last month has kind of felt like your feet have been dragging in some way, or, you know, people have been coming into your life or situations have been reoccurring, you're not sure why. The next week will have a lot of answers as per that. So keep a wee eye out. Now, this week we are going to be talking about Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars. Sorry, and Mars. And what we're going to be talking about these in the context of is getting what you want. Okay, and these planets are really, really important in our natal chart because they talk about our energy, they talk about what our partner's energy tends to look like, or our significant other, how we conflict, which is obviously the key to picking your battles, you know, which especially for intuitive people or for caring people, we need to know what battles are worth fighting and what battles are worth letting go. So that's really, really important, learning about the way that you conflict, what you need to defend, the way that your energy works, you know, and this is really, really, really powerful as well because everyone has energy that works in different ways and you can't force yourself uphill without getting burnt out. So all these things will be involved in Mars, and then we will look at Jupiter, which is the planet of luck and awareness and growth, which will show you more about all of those things in your life, and where you can afford to be optimistic, but also, and this is what's really interesting, how you can best generate abundance. So last week we spoke about money and values in terms of Venus, and Venus talked about money in the sense of what we love, how we want to spend our money, how we want to surround ourselves. Jupiter talks about literal money in the sense of what will bring you physical cash. So it's a really interesting planet to have a look at in your own natal chart because, you know, if you can cultivate your Jupiter, you can always go back to whatever or wherever your Jupiter is and use that to generate income. And then finally we will talk about Saturn. So Saturn gets a little bit of a bad rap, of course, if you've ever Googled anything about astrology or the planets. Saturn sounds incredibly depressing, but it's really not. And Saturn rules our long-term lessons. Saturn rules our long-term rewards. It can sometimes rule restriction, things that have come from our father, our karma, all that sort of stuff. But Saturn is easily workable. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. So if we're happy with that, of course, this is coming out on a Monday, not a Friday or Saturday like it normally does. The reason for that is about 10 of you emailed me over the weekend at the end of last week saying, oh my God, I'm so behind and I'm panicking and I've got to catch up with stuff and all that sort of thing. I kind of felt that that was going to be the case anyway because the days up until a new moon every month are what is called the dark moon. And this is when the moon is at her furthest point from Earth and her darkest point from Earth. And so humans, or all living things, have a bit of an energetic crash during this time. So we need to sleep more, we need to be in darkness more. You know, in a monthly cycle, especially for women, this is the time that we need to recharge the most. We're likely to be extremely energetically sensitive. So that is the time of month that everyone is so frazzled or feeling overstimulated or swamped or whatever. So I thought I would leave this a couple of days just to give you some time to catch up if you wanted to, or just sleep in if you wanted to, or just give your mind a break for a couple of days if you wanted to. So now that we've done that, we can start again. It's a new moon, so we're all like jazzed up and it's all like fiery Aries energy. So I'm really excited today to talk about like money and sex and like achievement. So let's start with Mars. Okay. So again, Mars travels fairly close to the sun and will normally be in someone's natal chart one sign on either side. Sometimes it'll be a little bit further if there's been a retrograde, but generally if you know someone's sun sign, you can kind of, it's like Mercury, you can kind of take a whack at where their Mars is going to be. Which reminds me, we need to talk a little bit more about Mercury. We'll do that next week. And so Mars in the natal chart is, of course, ruled by Mars, also Ares, the god of war. And this is how our energy shows itself. So the spark within us all. So when we talk about our seat of consciousness, in a spiritual sense, we might talk about the moon, i.e. intuition. We might talk about Neptune, as in spirituality or higher consciousness or awareness, whatever you want to call it. Mars is like the spark within us all. Like what wakes you up in the morning, what makes you want to be alive, what makes you feel alive. So Mars is a really important planet to look at in the natal chart because it also shows you how your energy operates. So for instance, I have a lot of clients that come to me and say, I'm kind of suffering burnout, I don't know how to motivate myself, I don't know what's wrong with me, blah, blah, blah. And I always go and look at their Mars. So again, if it has an aspect, and we'll talk about aspects in a couple of weeks, if it has an aspect to any planet, that planet is influencing your Mars. So, for instance, if Venus is in aspect to your Mars in some way, a lot of the time you will feel better about your life and more motivated the better you feel about your body. Whereas other people can go, oh, I look like crap today, but I'm still going to go and work hard. If you've got, just as a really surface level example, if you've got a Mars-Venus relationship there, having good relationships and feeling good about how you physically look are a massive part of being able to get through your day with focus and gusto, So, of course, look at the other planets that are impacting your Mars, but as a standalone planet, it rules how our energy functions. So it's really important to look at the sign that your Mars is in, because, and again, go back to the keywords that I've put in there for you, and I'll send you a couple of links on Mars signs as well, so you can read a bit more about your own. For example, Mars in Gemini tends to be very quick, needs a lot of information to process, seems to function a lot in the intellect. They need mental stimulation to keep going. A Mars in Gemini person is not someone generally who's going to run a solo marathon across, the tundra on their own. Not because they're not motivated, but because that solo plodding focused thing is not what makes them feel alive. Whereas someone like a Mars in, let's say a Mars in Capricorn, is someone who would have a better time, I'm going to fundraise with my run across, the Arctic tundra. It's going to take me 3 weeks, and I'm going to practice every day for 6 months, and I'm going to get up at 5 a.m. and I'm going to run 30 miles, and that step-by-step plodding solo. I don't need anyone else. I just need a good pair of running shoes and I can go. That would feel invigorating to a Mars in Capricorn person, whereas a Mars in Gemini would be like, oh my god, where is everyone? I'm alone, and this is so boring, and like, so it's really interesting to look at your Mars sign and go, okay, well, how can I push myself constantly to be doing more, but how can I push myself in the way that works best for me? And this is really handy as well if you're looking at fitness and how best you work out or you stay fit. Again, example, I'm a Mars in Taurus. We are very slow to get going, I suppose. We need to be comfortable at all times. I used to think there was something wrong with me because I was like, well, I can't go running if I've got, a hole in my sock. Like, that's barbaric. Or I can't focus if I haven't had breakfast because, like, that's that's terrible, you know, who would do that to me, sort of thing, I'm suffering. Obviously this is in my younger years, I'm much more tolerant now, but what I know about my Mars in Taurus is the idea of getting up at 6 a.m, doing cardio to stay fit, just kind of chucking on whatever, you know, to exercise or be motivated. That is so not my jam and will never ever motivate me, especially in terms of staying fit. What does really motivate me as a Taurus, as a bull sign, in how my energy manifests itself, is I love weight training. I invest a lot in comfortable shoes, whether it's training shoes, walking shoes, whatever. I have all the accoutrements, I suppose. If I am going hiking or something, you know, I've got the earmuffs and the gloves and the you know, I've always got water, I've always got snacks. I've always got snacks, by the way. If the world ever ended, it was the apocalypse, you could come to me because I'll have snacks on me somewhere. But, you know, instead of punishing myself for what I saw was being fussy, and I took care of what my Mars needs were, I get so much done. You know, I get a lot done instead of trying to operate in a way that works for other people, not for me. So yes, Mars, in terms of how you stay fit, in terms of your motivation to get through something, in terms of your staying power in a situation. And again, so if you've got, say, a Mars in Cancer, or a Mars in even Capricorn, you know, those would be more likely to stick with something out of loyalty, even if they've started it and it's not fun. Whereas, you know, a Mars in Sagittarius maybe, or a Mars in Aquarius, are less likely to feel compelled to stick to something over a long period of time if it's not really working for them. So again, it's about making allowances, is the word I was looking for there. Making allowances for yourself so that you can do as much as you physically can, and knowing what it is that you need to achieve. Mars also rules how we conflict, what we will fight over, what other people seem determined to conflict with us about, what part of us kind of gets other people's back up. And again, like I said about all the signs, there's a high road and there's a low road to everything. So when we look at how we conflict, or what we will conflict over, I would tend to look more at what house your Mars is in, because it's that part of you that seems to get other people's back up, or seems to annoy other people for some reason, even if sometimes you don't know why. That would be likely what it is. But you can use that part of yourself to motivate. For example, if you have Mars in the 3rd house, you might tend to have a lot more verbal arguments with people, but you can you can channel that into motivational speaking. You can challenge that into, I keep saying challenge, you can channel that. It's still kind of Mercury retrograde, so that's why it's going to be tongue-tied for the next couple of days. I am exhibit A right here. You can channel that into, like I said, motivational speaking. You can channel that into training of some kind. You can channel that into public speaking, debating, politics. And it would remove that source of conflict in your life, you know, because it would empower your Mars, rather than it just being this combustible, fiery planet that kicks off about nothing. So if you have Mars in the 11th house, you know, you might have, especially in your younger years, had a lot more conflicts about who you spend your time with, who you spend your money with, as in what organizations you buy from. This might be something you're really passionate about, whether it's sustainability, whether it's the way that people treat animals, that kind of thing. Mars in the 12th house, by the way, I will say, tends to be, afflicted is the word they use sometimes. I don't necessarily think afflicted is correct, but Mars in the 12th house, a lot of healers have this, but it also comes as a really karmic place for a Mars to be, and it shows that in some way your ability to assert and make decisions may have been blocked, or may not come to fruition as much as you would like. So if you do have a Mars in the 12th house particularly, this is one of your ongoing life lessons, is to make a decision and stick with it, you know, and in terms of that, listen to what makes you feel alive, what your heart is saying, your intuition, all those sorts of things, instead of being afraid to walk away from something, being afraid to cut something off, or being afraid to start or finish something. What else about Mars? Okay, Mars is really interesting also in terms of sex, in terms of what you like, how you tend to be. And something I will say as well, regardless of your sexual preference, if someone's sun sign is the same as your Mars sign, you will tend to have good sex, or you'll tend to have a nice physical connection with them. So whenever I've had a personal trainer, which I kind of hate because I hate the way they shout at you, which is a very Mars and Taurus stubborn thing. Like, you know, if you yell at me, I'm going to resist. So I don't really go very well with personal trainers. But I always ask personal trainers if I have one or mentors for their sun sign, because I know if they're a Taurus or they're an earth sign, we'll tend to get each other, because they will be able to physically motivate me. They'll be able to activate the spark within myself to get going on whatever it is. So if you meet someone, you know, and they tell you their sun sign, if it matches with yours, then yeah, you would have an invigorating effect on them. You would be sexually attractive to them. And there is a level of spark, connection, being motivated by each other. But if it was on a romantic level, you would have good sex. So that's always an interesting thing to contemplate as well. Is there anything else you need to know about Mars? Yes, like I said, Mars can be conflict. Mars can also be frustration, aggression, arguments, you know, but all these things can be productive if we direct them in the right way. So looking at what area of your chart, what house of your chart that Mars is in, finding a way to get motivated in that area, because that is where you have to get some energy moving. You gotta generate some change, some force, otherwise it'll come through in your life as conflict. So people that have a lot of arguments or a lot of stressful people around them, when they come to me for a session, I'm like, right, what are you doing with your Mars? Because that will also be the outlet to a lot of frustration. So that is Mars. I will obviously send you more information on it after this. And now we're going to talk about Jupiter and Saturn. Speak soon. Bye.